Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this lunchtime webinar brought to you by Arthur Edward and Threepipe. My name is Jim. I'm one of the co-founders of Threepipe. We are a brand performance agency that works with lots of beauty brands, including Saint-Tropez, Sanctuary Spa, L'Occitane, Cowshed, Elemis, and PhD, to name a few. We support these brands in the UK and internationally to drive sales across digital channels, including social and increasingly Amazon and marketplaces. So do get in touch if you'd like to see any examples of our work. We have a fantastic panel of speakers this lunchtime to examine some of the more recent digital trends in our industry, from product development to marketing and of course to people skills. My colleague Hannah Langley from Threepipe will share a short presentation before Heidi, the founder of Arthur Edward, will take us through her thoughts on how organisations are adapting from a skills perspective. We'll then head into questions with our fantastic panelists. Today we have Deborah Stead, who's Senior Consultant for DTC and UK Market Lead at Duolab for L'Occitane, and Saif Pathan, Head of Digital at Brand Architects, whose brands include Fish Soho, Superfacialist, and Dr. Saltz. We have lots of questions that have come in as part of the webinar registration, and we've included as many of those as possible in the Q&A. But if any more come to mind during the presentations, please use the Q&A function and we'll do our best to incorporate those as we go along and at the end of the presentation. I'll hand over now to Hannah and to Heidi for their presentations. Thank you.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining. As Jim said, I'm going to take you through some insights. Hopefully you'll find them interesting as we go through. So I think one of the things I wanted to cover off is a lot of the trends that we're seeing haven't suddenly happened because of COVID. These are all things that we've been seeing actually over the last few years, and we've all been talking about sustainability, inclusivity, customization, personalization over the last few years. But actually what we've seen is that COVID's just really accelerated all of these trends and brought them to the forefront of our lives. I think one thing that I just quickly want to touch on is actually for us, one of the things we've noticed is the beauty market has actually been pretty resilient. So even in 2008, when we had the last financial crisis, people stayed loyal, people stayed strong, and actually beauty saw an increase sort of back in 2010. And even last year, we saw that sales increased by 2020. So even though everything's been going on with COVID, actually the beauty industry has stayed pretty strong. However, unlike the 2008 crisis, we've seen a few challenges and a few differences. People haven't been able to go out, people haven't been able to go in store, so beauty counters have all been shut. And also the new health and safety rules that have come in have changed people's perceptions and willingness to try on new things, which we're going to talk through. So how do we market beauty in a pandemic or in the new normal? Because hopefully this year we're going to be coming out of it and come out of lockdown soon. So I'm going to talk to you about two different key sort of themes. One of them is channel changes. So how people consume media has completely changed, and how people find and research and buy products has changed. So we'll talk about that. But then also we're going to talk through the value that people place on their product. It's not just about how much something costs, but it's also about the value and the proposition of the product. So let's come on to channel changes. So as I alluded to, everybody's had to change the way that they research and look for products because everything has become pretty much online. So looking for personal touch points has been key. Tapping into individual lifestyles, everybody's lives completely changed. And we've really seen the need to have a good e-commerce strategy because everything now is online. Whereas before people would have been out on multiple touch points, we've really found that they have had to move everything to e-commerce. Personalised recommendations. We're not able to go in and talk to someone in, a beauty counter or in store. Actually, those recommendations and salespeople have gone. So how do we bring that online? Not only from a buying point of view, but then from a recommendation point of view. And really we've seen AI and augmented reality. These again aren't new things, but they've come into their own this year as we've had to use them because other avenues and narratives just haven't been there. So I think we can all agree if the outbreak has accelerated something, it's definitely been online shopping. People that might have been resilient to it before have had to move to it. And for the first time, we've really seen consistently that online sales have overtaken offline sales. And that's even in the summer when things opened up a lot. We saw that online actually took over offline. And it's here to stay. So I'll just call out these key stats. So 1/3 of beauty buyers are more likely to buy beauty products online post-outbreak. 51% of makeup and skincare consumers are expected to shop mostly or always online in the next 12 months. And this, for me, I think is the really key point, is 36% of UK consumers this year have shopped online with a retailer that they haven't shopped with before COVID. No longer do they have just the stores on the high street or the counters in their local John Lewis, but actually now they're susceptible to go anywhere that they want. People aren't necessarily brand loyal anymore because they have the opportunity to go to research, to try other things. And I think that's going to be really key in making sure that your online presence is strong. And with the store closures, we've really seen that actually the biggest increase, and this isn't necessarily just in the beauty market, but this is something that we've seen across a number of our different clients, is actually it's been that older generation have really had to accept and learn how to use online. Before they would have gone to their local store, but actually now they're much more likely, and you can see here in the percentage point change, more than all of the other generations, they've really come online. How are they doing that? So beauty consumers are relying on these channels, not only to do their purchasing, but also to do their research. And they're doing this across YouTube, social media, and even Google. So you can see here that 51% of users are expected to continue to use YouTube as a part of their research product, whereas before they would have gone in, they would have chatted to someone. Actually, they're now looking to these online channels to be able to do that. And it's not just the brands talking about them, it's also the influencers that become super important. So actually people are looking for those endorsements from celebrities, from bloggers, from vloggers. It's not just the brands talking about themselves, but it's also having those endorsements, having those recommendations from other people. Again, it's about bridging that gap. Before you would have gone in, you would have chatted to a staff member, but now they can't do that. So they're looking for other avenues to get these recommendations. And again, it's not just on these sort of typical, I'd say, social media, so YouTube and Instagram ads. We're looking at how our brands bridged that gap. I keep saying that, but it really has been that in terms of how can we do these product launches? We can't do big events, we can't do big glossy things with lots of people. How can we really tap into what we have? So we've seen that Dermalogica have used Vimeo, and we've seen that Instagram as really bringing live shopping. So we're thinking QVC, but actually how can we make that paid for? How can we bring live shopping? How can we adapt what we already have to ultimately solve a problem that we now have? So it's all about looking at new ways that we can use these platforms. Instagram live shopping's in the US at the moment, but I'm no doubt it will soon come over to the UK. And then AR. So we've been talking about augmented reality, I think, for a good few years now. But again, this is where it really came into its own, and people are able to try on lots of different products, not just one, not just two, but they can spend their time testing different things over a number of days. You don't have to just go in once and do it. You can actually test a lot of things. We can still see, though, that 45% of beauty buyers still do want to actually try on physical products at home, with 22% more willing to do virtual. So I don't think we're ever going to get away from physically testing things, especially until sort of AR evolves, and I'm sure it will. But it's not just a temporary fix. So actually, not only are we able to test on these different products, but the data that we're able to get from these AR and data and online is much more than we would have got from someone just going in a store, having a look at products, trying on. We're able to collect all of this and look for patterns. So Olay actually launched their Skin Advisor tool and saw that a lot of people were searching for products with retinol in, which then enabled them to look at their research and see, actually, we haven't got that in our R&D, we need to include that. So using all of this extra data that we've now got by people being online to feed into R&D, to feed into product development, to feed into what ingredients we're using more than ever. And L'Oreal, really, I think I talked about this in the last webinar we did, is really at the forefront of this. So they heavily invest in innovation and look at actually what products are coming. So they had their Modiface they purchased for their AR in 2018. And then this year they're launching Perso. So I'm going to play, hopefully without any technical issues, the YouTube video.
Are you getting the most out of your beauty routine? Introducing Perso by L'Oreal. a 3-in-1 device for personalized beauty. Powered by artificial intelligence, Perso creates skincare, liquid lipstick, and foundation just for you, on demand. Plus, it gets smarter over time. How does it work? In the app, Perso leverages L'Oreal's Modiface technology to evaluate your skin. Then it assesses important environmental factors like pollution, air quality, and humidity. Perso even considers your top skincare concerns and priorities. Next, it engages its patented 3-cartridge system, using advanced robotics to dispense the perfect formula for you. Perso can even create personalized foundation using its precise shade finder tool. Want to create a signature lip? Perso can do that too. Or try color matching. Coordinate your lip with your dress, shoes, or the latest trends. So next time you're staring into your cabinet, ask yourself, could your beauty routine be working smarter for you? Now, there's an intelligent beauty device with L'Oreal's unparalleled expertise. Perso by L'Oreal. Personalized beauty comes home.
And that wouldn't have just happened because of COVID-19, but actually that has been in the making for a long time, but it really encapsulates for me all of the things together. It's AR, it's personalized, it saves waste. You can test a bit before you really produce it all. For me, this is something that, you know, is really evolving. And I think the more and more we're seeing these products come out, the more and more it's going to become more prevalent in the market. And it's not just the sort of products that are coming, it's also making sure that we're inclusive and we're diverse. So again, this isn't something that we've just started talking about. What we've seen this year is actually men are becoming more and more interested in beauty. We were actually just talking before with Jim, and he just told us he uses tinted moisturiser, which I'm sure he's pleased that I'm telling you all. But you know, more and more men are interested in, but from the stats that we're seeing, they actually don't know what to use. So they need a bit more personalisation. They need to know what products are right for them. And that brings me nicely on to sort of the value that it holds. So what value do we hold to each of our products? So it's not just about the product, but it's also how does it make them feel? As I said before, it's quality, convenience, purchase, rather than actually just the currency of how much something costs. It's what impact does that have on a person's life? And we've seen that actually priorities have changed in COVID-19. So pre-COVID, people were buying makeup, people were buying shampoo, they're buying skincare, but actually coming out of it, we're wearing less makeup than before. We want a simpler routine, and actually we're investing actually in products that are good for the quality of our skin rather than just how they look. It's interesting, we were coining it all, saying, oh, it's the lipstick effect, because we saw the beauty market, you know, it was still doing pretty well, but actually lipstick was down. People didn't need to buy it anymore. So it's interesting how what happened in 2008 financial crisis and people buying that affordable luxury, actually the same impact happened, but not necessarily the same products. And these, again, that simpler routine, wanting to be better for our skin, are trends that we've seen through the last few years. So I just wanted to call out a couple here. We've got German beauty, which is all about scientific, simpler, using sort of science and technology and the impact that it has. But also K-beauty, which is about simple steps, nothing complicated, just really easy to understand. And that is what we're seeing consumers continue to strive for and look for in their routines. And of course, wellness. And this is a big trend that we saw last year, people wanting to have spa days at home. They couldn't go out anymore, but they wanted to invest in that time in themselves at home. People looking for air purifiers, essential oils. And actually, not only did they want to spend a bit more money on them, but they wanted to spend the time. It was something to do, it was something different to do. So how did that make them feel? How mentally did it make them feel? That was having a big impact in what we saw. And not only then are consumers worried and interested in how the product makes them feel, but it's also what ingredients are in those products. So we're seeing that actually global sales for just products claiming to be natural, we've seen a slight decline, but products that are talking about being paraben-free and actually talking about the ingredients, and then products that are starting to do both, so paraben-free and natural, have seen a sharper increase in sales. But it's not that consumers are just taking brands' words for it anymore. We're actually wanting to be a bit more knowledgeable and really dig into whether that brand's being authentic. So we've seen an app called Think Dirty, which I think is fantastic, which is where actually you can go in and say, this is the product that I want to buy, and it will list out all of the ingredients, and you can actually say, okay, yes, it is being clean and it does do all of these things, and it's not just believing in claims. And I think that's what, when we talk about authenticity being a trend that we've seen, that is where we're, you know, consumers really want to believe in what you're saying, but now we're starting to check that we believe what you're saying. I think that's a key sort of change. And then not only do we want to know what's in the product, we also want to know about the packaging and what happens to the product after we've used it. So recently there's been blue beauty, so now looking at marine life and how it affects oceans, and thinking about the great impact that this product then has on the environment, not only the actual ingredients in the product itself, but the packaging. So we've seen Lush and L'Oreal actually start to innovate in these areas. So obviously we've got no packaging from Lush, and then we also have L'Oreal, which has produced a shampoo and a conditioner which needs less water. So really looking at these trends. And then we were just talking about these before. These are then continuations, innovations of these. So Lush last year produced a soap that took 30 seconds to wash your hands. So if you don't want to sing happy birthday to yourself twice, actually you could just have this tiny soap and then you could use it. And by the time that you've washed your hands, the time you're meant to have done, it's gone. It's perfect. It's no waste. It uses exactly how much you need. And also you're washing your hands for a long enough time. And then L'Oreal looking at virtual makeup. So when you're on Zoom calls, when you're on calls, you can actually be there makeup free, but the other person on the end of the phone thinks, hang on a minute, they look fantastic, they've got makeup. It's less waste, you're not using all the makeup, you're using less products. So it's, again, it's innovating in these areas to enhance the consumer's experiences and thoughts of the brands. But then also I think a bit linking into the inclusivity and diversity, we need to break the mold with stereotypes, and we've seen more and more partnerships with games. So we've got Colourpop here and Mac who have invested in partnerships, sort of trying to branch out, reach new audiences, test new things. 41% of gamers are women, but these are aimed at young men. Men are becoming more interested in beauty. So again, it's thinking outside the box a little bit to tap into those audiences. So my key takeaways here are online is here to stay for all demographics and more in the older generations. Find new ways to talk to your audience, bridge that gap of that previous store experience. They're not getting those recommendations that they would have done before. And also they can go to a lot of places for those recommendations. So how can you talk to these people? Stay ahead of the curve. Technology takes a while to evolve and adapt. So we need to always be at the forefront and thinking about it. Think about values and what your consumer values, and then be authentic in that, back it up and innovate and simplify your product offering, because that's where we've seen sort of massive trends come forward. That's all from me. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Hannah. Now we're going to hand over to Heidi, who's going to run through some thoughts about skills people need to adapt to the new trends that we've been talking about. So I'll hand over to Heidi.
I've got to unmute myself. Hi everyone, and thanks Jim, and thanks Hannah for the great insights there, really interesting. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Heidi Bannister, founder and MD of Arthur Edward. Now, I've worked in the cosmetics industry for over 30 years, and one of the real joys of our industry is that it is always evolving. There's constant innovation, sometimes ingredient or packaging led, maybe consumer trends or lifestyle changes. And now, I guess more than ever, it's the shifts in technology that are driving the change. So 2020 was a strange year, and as Hannah said, there were things that were moving and evolving already, but certainly the COVID pandemic affected all of us. Online, I guess, is the new normal, and as Hannah mentioned, we talk about the lipstick effect and how we as an industry are pretty recession proof, as we all like to cheer ourselves up, especially Jim, with a new lipstick. But lipsticks certainly were hardest hit, and minus 50% down in sales with many of the reports. Although this did allow for more innovation with smudge proof and stay put formulations, and also the roaring sales of hand sanitizer. I don't think anyone's ever used so much hand sanitizer before, and the tech and new try-ons that Hannah showed us, which are really exciting. I'm also really pleased to hear L'Oreal come up with another memorable strapline, and I for one am delighted that beauty is coming home, not just football, because we're all worth it. So 2020 was a breakthrough year for online sales. We saw some companies really driving forward whilst others were left in the dark trying to evolve their marketing strategy. We've all got used to Teams and Zoom calls and the face-to-face meetings and moving online, but it's a wonderful chance to have a nose in someone's home office, although I really still don't like seeing their dirty washing hanging behind them, but pets are always nice to see. The rapid change in how we live, work and play, and how we communicate with each other on an individual and also a group basis is increasing the demand for all kinds of new digital skills. And it really is affecting every business. It's not just the direct to consumer, but the B2B and B2C world as well. Digital skills are more important now than ever before. Sales and marketing are being disrupted, and the marketing department is evolving as much as the products that we love. Channels to market have changed. Traditional advertising models are less productive. Print media has shrunk. There's been huge growth in e-com, social media, and also influencers. The whole world, and definitely the marketing department, looks very different to 10 years ago. Initially, digital sales and marketing were handled as a subsection of the main marketing department, often falling into someone's job description who already handled many areas of MPD or traditional, dare we say, old school marketing. Now, digital often takes the lead in the marketing mix, receiving the lion's share of focus and budget, as well as headcount within the marketing department. Pre-digital, we were used to job titles like marketing manager, MPD manager, communications manager. Now we're recruiting for specific digital managers and roles like content manager, performance analyst, UX specialist, affiliate or tribe manager. These are job titles that just didn't exist when I started in recruitment. And with the digital sector still taking shape, technology constantly evolving, the roles really are less defined and they vary enormously between companies. In general, what we're finding at Arthur Edward is that larger companies employ individuals with specific skills to handle most digital functions in-house. Then they use external consultants or agencies for specific projects or highly specialist skills. Whereas your SMEs, your startups and your indie brands usually employ a digital generalist, each covering several disciplines, and maybe they would have more of a project manager type of role to work with and sense check on the external consultants and agencies that they work with for the specialist skills. So there's definitely universal recognition from senior management that digital transformation is essential. I mean, we all know it. We're all using online so much more in all areas of our life. But many of these senior managers generally feel a bit ill-equipped and unprepared to plan and implement such radical changes. So I think if you're in that position, the best thing to do is bring in an experienced digital consultant or an agency that can really help you shake things up. They can look at where you are now, where you want to get to, and help to set strategies, process, and also a training plan to make those changes. They will help identify the most productive route forward to get you to the market quickly, and that will help you and avoid not just cost, but time-consuming mistakes that see your competitors storming ahead of you. I think I've always been very strongly in favour of upskilling or reskilling your existing team to meet new business needs. And if the current team get the business, they get the brand and the values, and they've got all the general marketing skills, maybe you just need a bit of digital training or some digital focus to help get some really great results. If you can work with your existing team, it will benefit the business, it will reduce disruption, boost satisfaction, loyalty and retention, which is really important. I always recommend anyone and everyone in business and life in general to keep learning and growing. We should all be looking at increasing our digital knowledge, and thankfully there's plenty of training opportunities out there. If we look at some of the online courses, There are options for all levels. Just have a look at there. So these are some of the ones that we recommend. The Google Skill Shop is a great place for Google Analytics, Google Ads, all sorts of different things. And these courses are generally quite short, they're focused, you can invest a little bit of time and money, and then you can dip in and out and keep learning. LinkedIn Learning is also a great place to go. They have a variety of digital training courses at loads of different levels, advanced technical aspects of digital marketing, and HubSpot is a great place too. There's lots and lots of free marketing courses where you can get certification and bite-sized courses which can fit into your work schedule and help you develop new skills or polish up existing ones. If you've got the time and you've got the resource and the money and you really want to go for it, there's lots of formal advanced education. So many companies are sponsoring employees who choose to take on additional learning. And there's an interesting debate, which is often between HR and finance. So the FD will come down to HR and say, what if we educate the staff and they leave? And us on the HR side will say, what if we don't and they stay? So think about that for a minute. If you're an employee and you want to take a course, I would definitely recommend discussing it with your manager. Lots of universities will offer bachelor's and master's degrees in general marketing or digital marketing, or you can go to a specialist professional body, something like the Institute of Data and Marketing, the Chartered Institute of Marketing, or the Digital Marketing Institute. Other than structured education, you can also learn from those in the know. So look at experts, look at agencies and organisations that are online. They keep you up to date with all the latest marketing news from literally around the world. Some of the websites we go to are Digital Agency Network, Marketing Land, The Drum, PR Week and Marketing Week. I am a real fan of podcasts. I have a dog and spend an hour walking the dog every day, and I'm always listening to a podcast. Look at the Digital Marketing Podcast for general news and tools and techniques with all different global experts. One of my favourite ones is the Marketing School, Daily Digital Tips with Neil Patel and Eric Sue. And another great one is eCommerce Master Plan, and they look into real insights onto online retailing, which I think is important for a lot of cosmetics companies. The other thing to think about is mentoring. It can be incredibly helpful if you want to progress in your company or your career in general, to seek advice from people that you admire, people who have done the job that you're in, or people who are doing the job that you want. Mentors don't have to come from inside your organisation. Think about reaching out to someone within the industry. The Society of Cosmetic Scientists, Cosmetic Executive Women and the British Beauty Council all offer mentoring programmes. So ask your boss, ask your peers and your friends if they know of anyone who might be interested in mentoring you. And don't be shy. Most people will be really flattered because we all love to help. And don't forget that mentoring helps the mentee and the mentor. So it's a great thing to do. Job shadowing is another thing to think about. Not so easy when we're all out of the office and working at home. But if you spend a few hours watching someone apply their digital skills, or you get involved in a few digital projects, it's a great way to learn on the job. And for people in creative roles, practical experience, shadowing a graphic designer or a visual content creator is really helpful. And I think the final thing is events. Things like this are great. It's great that you're spending the time to join us today. Industry events are really good opportunities to learn from a wide range of people. And people in all different sectors, conferences are great for networking and to learn from. And the fact that things are online makes it easier because you haven't got to travel, you can dip in and out, which is easy. Networking is a little harder, but you can always follow up with interesting speakers and get in touch with them after the event. Also keep tabs on Eventbrite, places like Cosmetics Business, and again, the SCS, CW, BBC sites for industry sources. I think we all have to accept digital is moving and changing. We must embrace it. Don't expect to change or upskill you or your team overnight, but time invested in career planning or establishing your team's needs will provide a strong foundation for digital growth. So thanks for listening. Just before I hand back to Jim, can I just take a minute to mention the Arthur Edward Cosmetic Industry Salary Survey? We're closing that on Friday, and it's always great to look at the report and compare salaries and benefits within the industry. And this year, obviously, we're including quite a lot around the working environment and how the pandemic has affected our work-life balance. So if you haven't done it, please take a minute to share your views. You'll find it on the arthuredward.com. So there you go. I'll hand you back to Jim for the panel discussion. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Heidi. That's very informative, and thanks also again to Hannah for your presentations. We're going to move into the Q&A section of the webinar. I can see that people have been quite shy asking questions, so please do feel free to use the Q&A function. But I'm going to bring in Saif and Deborah now, alongside Hannah and Heidi, to ask some questions. Deb, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay. Which business do you think are able to adapt more quickly to some of these changing consumer and retail trends that we've been hearing about this morning or this lunchtime?
Yeah, an interesting question, and I think there is no rule really. And I know we talked about looking at smaller brands, larger brands. You know, typically and historically, startup small brands have been agile, and they don't have the levels of bureaucracy or process to go through, and have been able to respond very quickly. And the larger brands obviously have probably spending power, probably have more in-house speciality. But I think what we've seen really over the last year is that it's actually all for their own, and it probably comes down to 4 key things. So one is, and very much as Heidi's been talking about, is about the people, the expertise and the mindset in-house. We've seen some businesses really pivot, you know, within weeks to cope with COVID. So very much about, you know, productivity and the team structure, the leadership style, which is absolutely fundamental, the overall attitude, and you know, process simplicity. So some brands and businesses have done very well to come online when they really didn't have an online offering or process, but they've really showed that it can be very simple and it can be very straightforward. So I think the people and the expertise piece is one thing. Then very interesting to hear Heidi talk about the blend of either using agencies or in-house speciality. And again, you know, budgets and pockets will determine that a little bit. But I think with smart leadership and agile thinking, both small and big companies have really embraced the challenges that the crisis has set. So people is one. I think 2 is data and how we're using it. And I think probably Saif is going to talk a lot more about this, but you know, I think what we've seen is a lot of people, a lot of brands and businesses have done well with a loyal customer base. So that customer base have been able to continue to shop what they know they like. And I think there is an element of caution, like, you know, the statistics of if you go to a supermarket or you make a supermarket order, it's a very, very high percentage of products that you order or buy or put in your basket week on week. And I think we've seen the same thing start to happen with data, whereby the algorithms are identifying what you like and they're narrowing down the choice of what is offered to you. And I think we have to be really careful that our businesses and management of our data and our algorithms are not removing the discovery element. And Doug Stevens is a retail prophet come visionary, which, you know, I follow a lot and highly respect. And he's talked a lot about this, is you know, don't kill discovery. So, you know, we are hardwired as consumers to have surprise, and that makes us feel good. It's a sort of form of dopamine. So we want to discover, we want to be pleasantly surprised. So I think we need to be very careful with our data usage. And at the end of the day, you know, 10, 15 years ago, businesses were led by creative brains, you know, either a creative lead or a strategic lead. Now we have that opportunity for those incredible personalities and abilities, but enhanced with data and not just led by data. So I think data is it's an incredible gift. And as Hannah talked about, we can collect data from the 360 of the omnichannel that businesses and brands can work within, but we just need to be careful that we're using it really smartly. And then I think the third thing is obviously the winners and the losers in the COVID crisis has been very much about the brands that have been very, very clear on their purpose. And I don't mean, a brand mission statement, but where do they actually operate within the ecosystem and the bigger picture? And again, Doug Stevens, and I promise I'm not on commission from him, but he's talked and published, and he's got a new book coming out in May, and he has talked very much about businesses and brands stepping into, and he's given 6 examples of a sort of categorization. So things like the storyteller. So, big businesses like Nike step into that. They give you inspiration that, you can run a marathon and you can do it in a super fast time, but it's all about you're buying into the brand and the story it tells. The activists, brands like Patagonia, incredibly powerful brands, but it's all about what they're standing up for. And I think we'll see a lot more of that. And, maybe we see in beauty brands like The Body Shop, where they're really fighting for key campaigns. The third one, the artists. So where we're seeing a lack of or struggling with physical retail, and we obviously see retail start to open up in the next couple of months. But the artist is all about, whether it's in physical or digital, bring the experience back, the theatre, again the discovery. And Doug Stevens uses an example of a toy brand called Camp. And they basically, you step into a store and what you see on the front of the store is a toy shop, but then you open and you go behind a door, a private door, and actually it's all about children's experiences, and it's actually where families can go and have a day together. So it's way more than a toy shop. So, really interesting. Fourth is the Oracle. So where brands are really setting themselves up to be the absolute expert, the curator, and Hondiki is an example where they're a watch marketplace where they are the absolute experts in all things watches. Maybe the engineer, so brands like Apple, where the way they engineer their products is so special and so precise that's the sector that they've carved out for themselves. Or maybe the 6th categorization that he uses is the renegade. And they're probably a disruption brand. And maybe we're seeing brands like Beauty Pie stepping into that, whereby, offering premium priced products for mass prices through a subscription. So I think where you sit in your purpose and what your clarity of mission is really, really important. And I think lots of brands are a little bit also ran, and therefore they've not seen the traction in this crisis. And that's their opportunity to be much more defined. And then the last thing, which been reading a book recently by a guy called Matthew Said, and he's a very well-known commentator, and he has a book called Rebel Ideas, and it's all about leadership and people's behaviour, but there's a really big element of cognitive diversity. And we hear so much and we're talking so much about demographic diversity, but I think, building on some of the points that Heidi made, is that what we need more and more is, the way that brands and businesses grow and develop is going to be much more dependent on having speciality and different thoughts within a group, and not everybody within that team or that business coming from a similar background. And I've worked with many clients where there is a type, people maybe call it a culture, but the business or the owner is very much has a type of person. And I think where the boundaries are really being pushed and where the lines are being blurred, I think more and more businesses are going to have that cognitive diversity. So they've really got inspiration coming from different directions, and they're happy to challenge each other. And I think that's going to be crucial.
Great, thank you. Saif, I'm going to bring you in now. You've been very patient. I'm going to ask, I mean, obviously, online sales were fantastic last year for a lot of beauty brands, but they didn't necessarily make up the shortfall because of the retail store closures. And that's putting a lot of pressure on budgets this year. How is your business going to start prioritising that on and offline sort of resource as the world opens up, but the digital channels are hungry for investment as well?
Sure. So we definitely felt the impact of store closures, and as you say, the loss that we suffered in terms of revenues from stores wasn't really completely filled in terms of online, whilst we did have a big boost. And our approach really is, to follow our longer term vision, which is to become a very omni-channel business. So we're trying to balance those two seemingly conflicting channels, but whilst the stores were closed, we definitely increased our investment for online, both in our D2C channel in-house, but also through third-party e-tailers and the marketing that we put to attract consumers to those third-party stores. And sort of echoing Deborah's point, this point about discovery is very key to us. A lot of our traditional consumers really discover our brands through bricks and mortar. So where that's taken away, we had to supplement that by increased marketing investment, particularly for third-party retailers. And so we balance that out. Longer term, we're trying to put more investment to create a new marketplace. One of the exciting things that we're looking at is trying to bring all of our brands into a single umbrella site. This is a development that we've got ongoing at the moment, but we are trying to complement each channel so that they're not really cannibalizing consumers, and then we're sort of getting revenue from all channels rather than just online versus offline.
That was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Obviously, you've got a lot of brands in your portfolio, over 20, I think. You prioritising the resource across all of that? Obviously, they're not spread thinly. It sounds like you're trying to collate them from a DTC perspective as well to have some efficiency.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have, as a business, we really house sort of challenger beauty brands. We have relationships with particular retailers where we have exclusives, and then we are actively looking at M&A activity as well. But our sort of purpose is to provide an outlet to bring to market brands that we think are strong. They have a very specific purpose, and we have a very broad portfolio that covers everything from skincare through to hair care and beauty. So what we're looking to do with the new marketplace is provide essentially a one-stop shop, so that we can cater for a number of different consumer needs and sort of different demographics, both male and female, and sort of across the age range. I think the other key point is that what we're trying to offer is a move away from what's traditionally been a key proponent with beauty, which is a very stylized view, sort of like a very model-centric, sort of almost unattainable beauty, and we're trying to peel back to appeal to a consumer that doesn't really have a multi-step beauty routine, and more importantly, may not understand all the different components that you would use and how to use a new product. But it's just sort of time starved. They don't have an hour in the morning to get ready. There's so many other demands on time, whether you're just a busy working person, a busy mother, those sort of things take a lot more preference. And so we're trying to pare back and provide access to a range of products that just make it easier to get there. So we're trying to put together a more comprehensive portfolio that caters across those demographics.
Yeah, Brand Architect has a fantastic reputation from getting products to market very quickly, from concept to on the shelf, as it were, in a matter of months. And what sort of data sources are you guys using to enable that? Is it all gut feel, or is it actual real empirical sort of data?
I'd love to say that we have a whole stack of algorithms and a bank of data scientists, but the reality is it's actually borne out through very deep experience. We have a fantastic NPD team, and it's really driven by their range of connections in the marketplace, talking to suppliers, manufacturers, understanding of formulation. So, you know, traditionally, largely it's been driven by gut feel and then supported by data. The sort of data sources we use, things like Mintel, Kantar, WGSN. But when we start looking at sort of trend information, if we look at data that we buy in, for example, with Nectar 360 or IRI, if we start picking up data points from there, typically what that means is that that product has already gone mainstream. So, you know, that's sort of reinforcing a gut opinion we may have had, or it's emphasizing to us what the consumer demand is. But in our success, it is really driven by the people that we have on board and their depth of experience.
And Deb, coming back to you, a lot of brands were caught on the hop, I think, in terms of having these distribution channels just pulled away from under their feet. And moving forwards, obviously, there's quite a breadth of channels available to brands now, on and offline. What does a more balanced channel strategy look like these days, do you think?
Yeah, interesting. And I was involved with the brand Duolab as they launched last February, and literally had a very strong physical distribution strategy. And of course, you know, literally within weeks of rolling that out, so into L'Occitane stores, into Harrods, into a pop-up store on Regent Street, it literally all of that was closed down. So it was a very, very challenging time for both them and I'm sure lots of other brands in a very similar situation. Really difficult for a new brand launching. But I think probably what we're starting to see, and it will gather more and more momentum, is, you know, physical stores will reopen, and they are incredibly important. They're not going to go away. But I think we'll just see stores, for example, being used in a very different way. So, you know, maybe in different locations. So there will be a really big piece around changing geography. So we've heard a lot about, you know, city centres versus market towns. So people feeling more comfortable. You know, is that temporary? Is that permanent? We'll see some changes. The actual store itself may be used more as a billboard. Maybe more brands will have less stores, but the stores they have will be, you know, more theatre orientated, more immersive, offering different services, maybe delivery from those specific locations. I think we'll see more in the pop-up sort of area where, you know, market towns, high streets will have pop-up spaces that are just used all of the time. And I think the other sort of omni-channel elements that, you know, again, are expanding by the day as it seems. So, you know, online is becoming way more sophisticated. And I think the brands that survived the crises probably, you know, did well on a transactional basis. But I think there's massive opportunity to make their online much more experiential. And that I'm sure lots of brands are desperate to get into. I think, you know, the delivery services that online are now offering, so things like the try before you buy with fashion we're seeing, and, you know, there's a no-brainer that will just get bigger and bigger and more complex. Delivery times have been now measured in hours, not days, and maybe, you know, store locations will help much more of that. We've seen a real evolution of the customer service. So again, you know, it's almost been opportunistic where store or retailers have had, you know, people in stores that maybe have been, you know, they don't have a role because the store is closed. So bringing them into a live customer service helpline, which I think is, you know, if you're measuring, you know, by particular service is probably not returning, but in terms of a holistic picture of what a brand is delivering, I think it's going to be very important. And, you know, user reviews, you know, there's now almost a 360 of wherever a customer engages with a brand in whatever form of channel, the feedback can come through, so we can learn literally day by day. And the virtual tech, Hannah talked a lot about virtual tech. So, you know, we're even seeing, you know, a professor at Harvard working on a fragrance app so that people can actually smell. So all senses can be involved. And the social side of things, and again, Hannah touched on many of these things. We're seeing, you know, the pop-up live, the Instagram shopping, a lot of TV, you know, apps where you can overlay on a TV show where certain items and products have come from. You know, what's the lipstick shade and brand of that the actress is wearing. So we'll see more and more of that. And then something which is a very old-fashioned channel, but again has really come into its own, is direct selling. And we've seen the Body Shop at Home, you know, they've gone gangbusters with their consultants, you know, again, not necessarily going into people's homes, but having those personal connections and really building transactions strongly. And you know, that's been incredible. And I think we'll see more and more, again, where therapists haven't been able to go into people's homes and give hands-on treatments. I think there's a real role for them to be much more advisory, to have a sales arm without being seen as salespeople, and to really build on their expertise. So I think we're seeing, you know, a real, you know, where one door has closed, i.e. physical, I think the amount of new doors that have opened have been incredible and will just grow and grow by day.
Okay, thank you. I've got a few questions coming in about digital channel selection. So I'll bring Hannah in for this one. Because I know, you know, you're busy planning lots of media activations for clients, and even TikTok, and actually LinkedIn is mentioned here. So where do you start when you're trying to plan out a campaign at the moment? Because there's so much choice.
It really depends on what you're trying to achieve. So ultimately, and it goes on to what Deborah was just saying, are you trying to build long-term brand equity? Are you trying to get across where your standpoint is? Or are you just going for direct sales? Because ultimately you do need to do a bit of everything. You can't just be direct, hard sell. You also need to make sure that you've got the resource in-house to look after these channels and these platforms, especially if we're looking at social media. There is an organic element there. People are on there all the time. Like they'll go to your Instagram page if they've seen an ad, or, you know, they'll engage with you in other ways. And if you're not looking after that, and if you haven't got that, I mean, we often call an Instagram page like the shop front, because actually that is a digital shop front where people will go to. And if that isn't being looked after, I wouldn't recommend spending all of your budget in Instagram, because there's such a disjointed journey. You're not looking after all of your elements. So rather than saying, okay, well, we'll do a bit here and a bit here and a bit here, actually try and unpick what you've got, what you're trying to achieve, and do you have the resource either through an agency or internally to manage all of these things, rather than sort of trying to do a bit of everything, because I think it then gets a bit diluted and you lose what you stand for and what your values are, because you're trying to do all of these things and you just physically can't look after them. And then I'd say, when you get there, look at what you're doing, look at your data, look at where you're seeing your engagement rates on the platforms that you are looking after, and start there, because ultimately that's where you're seeing your audience. And then if you do want to do tests or test different platforms or investigate, should we be looking in that? You can use small test budgets on paid to say, actually, is TikTok working? Let's invest a little bit in TikTok to do that. But again, you need to think about the longer term strategy for that. Do you have someone that can create all the TikTok, like a TikTok creator? Do you have those people that can do that in-house? If you don't, is that a waste of a test paid budget? Because actually you can't then do that long term. So I think it's not so clear cut anymore, because you sort of need to look at the whole picture and the evolution of what you're trying to achieve and how you're trying to achieve it.
Follow the data.
Follow the data.
Exactly.
My favourite.
I can see Heidi's been answering a lot more of the sort of HR questions, which I'm pleased about. But Heidi, I'll come to you quickly now. In terms of, one of the questions was, there's so many different job titles out there for digital people. It's quite confusing, I think, when you're trying to put a team together. Where do you start trying to figure out which skill in which place and what all these job titles actually mean?
Well, I think, again, because it's changing so quickly, you don't always know what you need, but I think you've got to get it written down. And the number of companies, particularly smaller companies, when they don't have the time or the resources, they come to us and they want someone, but they don't really know what they want them to do. And you talk about data, you can't measure how well someone's doing if you don't know what you want them to do. So think about what it is, write it down, think about KPIs and the results that you want to achieve, and gradually you can get a job spec together. It may be a bit disjointed and like an odd just list of requirements, but if you've got to start somewhere, then it evolves. And I think at Arthur Edwards we help companies write specs, and we have a number of general templates that can help start that conversation. But please don't not do a job spec. It's impossible to recruit without one, and you as a manager can't justify the budget to employ the person or to even use a consultant if you don't know what you want to achieve. So you just got to write things down.
Okay, I'm just aware of the time, so what I thought I'd do each panelist in turn with the same question, which is, can you tell us a company, a brand in this sector that you think's pivoted really well? And I guess not the obvious bigger ones that can invest in AR and AI and all that great stuff, but perhaps someone we're currently working with that people don't know about that they can go and check out. I'm sure Saif will mention one or two of his own brands perhaps, but I'll start with you, Hannah. What do you think?
I actually think aromatherapy associates who we're working with have really pivoted. So, and they're lucky, right, because they're essentials aromatherapy, but actually that's an up and coming trend, and they've been able to pivot and look at their creative and what is their content showcasing. So linking the two, linking what their brand values are, what content they're pushing out, and we really adapted that last summer. We actually sort of investigated it all. What do we want to talk about? What is really key? Group them together to start getting that data and saying this is what's working, this is not what's not working, and then they're just adapting their products for some product launches this year. So I think they've sort of done a bit of everything, which has meant that they've been able to really push forward.
Great. Saif, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think when I look out, particularly in the colour cosmetics field, that there's some innovative work going on there. And one brand that I would highlight is EX1. So in terms of inclusivity, that they've got a very specific vision to produce products that will go across a broader range of skin tones. And they've done particularly well in terms of expanding overseas. I think they've just recently launched in Dubai and are expanding across that, and they're now in a number of stores in the UK. I think in our space, there's a number of brands that are doing well, but the Inky list comes to mind. I think, again, the work that Colette has done has sort of really stood out well.
Deb?
I think I'd have to bring up Beauty Pie as a sort of best example of they've really disrupted the marketplace. You know, they've come in on a subscription basis. They've really disrupted price and value, which is a fairly ballsy thing to do in the industry. And of course, Martia Kilgore, everything she touches has been a super success. But they apparently, since the beginning of lockdown, they grew by something like 400% in the beginning of March, and have then added hundreds of percent of growth onto that, week on week or month on month. So I think that they've been clever because it's a subscription. They've built a community. They've used all of their digital touch points. And the proposition is very clear. They are the renegade. They are really doing something differently. So my hat off to them, I think. Finally,
to Heidi.
Well, I think Formula Botanica is an interesting business. It's not a product company, but a training company. And I think the B2B world, sometimes they don't think so much about digital, but ultimately what they're doing is approaching anyone and everyone and helping with those initial stages of cosmetic learning, which is fantastic. And it's great to see a real B2B business that's doing something a little bit different. They're attacking people that want to launch brands, and that's innovation. It's what the industry is all about, and they're doing it in a great way. And Saif was very polite not to mention some of his brands. Superfacialist has got a great website and lots of good tips on skincare as well. So good one there as well to watch.
It would have been bad if he talked about his own brands. But I think thank you so much for today's session. I really want to say thank you to Saif and Deb for guesting on as panelists on this webinar, and also Hannah and Heidi for brilliant presentations. We've had some questions about whether we'll make this available. Yes, we will. We'll make the recording available, and also the presentations that you've seen again today, we'll make those available to you in the next day or so. But thank you so much for attending, and do get in touch if you'd like to talk to any of us about anything that you've heard us talk about today. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.